Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another round of Mind Your Fucking Business with your host, Jeffrey Johnson.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks, coming to you from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind Your Fucking Business podcast, brought to you by both the Bamboozle Project and DraftKings. We thank them both equally for their sponsorship of our program. You can go to thebamboozleproject.com, check out everything that is on the site, whether that be the MYPB gear on it or a bunch of other stuff they have on it that is good, and use MYPB promo code at checkout, and magically, like magic, 20% will disappear from your order, so you can save yourself 20%. We thank DraftKings for their sponsorship as always. This is episode 187, 187. So if you are joining us today or this evening, whenever you are joining us, and you can utilize those SAP features available to you, we welcome you to MYPB. We are taping this episode just so everyone knows where we're current. If you're listening to us not live, that would be today is February 19th. So we're taping this episode on Wednesday, February 19th. And you can send your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com, or you can DM us on the Instagram platform like you guys do all the time. And you can listen to the show live this morning on February 19th, as I mentioned. You can watch us live right now on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, although I don't think we even use Facebook. So stick with YouTube or Instagram.
Yeah.
Are we?
We're live everywhere.
Stick with YouTube or Instagram. Or if you want to stream us at your convenience, you can listen at your leisure whenever it's good for you, preferably in the car on Spotify or iTunes. Yes, you're pointing to something. Are you
Instagram?
Instagram. Yes, and Instagram. We are live on the Instagram platform as well at Mind Your Fucking Business. So I think we got all of that intro stuff out of the way here. So we are in the middle of this 2-week NHL hiatus. We've almost made it. We have 3 days to go until the NHL returns on Saturday, and the Rangers are one of the teams that does return on Saturdays. It will be in Buffalo, which we'll get to in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the Four Nations tourney first. So, I've said all along, and I'm going to stick with what I've said about this, that this is an appetizer really for next year, which is in the 2026 Olympics. I do think this is definitely way more exciting than the All-Star game is and ever has been. I will admit, and this may surprise some of you, but I will be honest because that's how I go about doing things. There's been years recently the All-Star game is going on, and the skills competition that they do the day or the night before, I don't even watch it. I don't even care for it. It's almost like it's a vacation. When the Four Nations has been on, as the viewership ratings have shown you already, people do care and they are watching. So now I've said all along that I will watch it, and I have, but that has also been because there hasn't been a lot of other things on TV. Mm-hmm. It has been if you can take your allegiance to the Rangers out or whatever NHL team you follow, mm-hmm. and just look at it as like hockey and the quality of the game. This is some really good quality hockey. Coaches and players across all four teams, and the announcers that are on TV have said this 1,600 times. So if you've watched it, you've heard them say this, is that they've all said that this might be the fastest pace they've ever played it. And that is because the skill level is so high. Mm-hmm. I mean, the speed, right? The speed of these guys, the top elite 1%ers that play in the NHL are in this tournament. So my problem with it, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, I'm just trying to be honest, is look, you have 4 teams here, and 2 of them make the finals. So it's not like to make the finals tomorrow night, and will I watch it? Yes. Will you watch it? I would hope so. But to make the finals, you have a 50% chance of making the finals here. I mean, it's not like you're going through weeks and weeks to make the finals here. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I have a problem with it when I look at the competitive factor, and I'm sure there's a political reason to it, and I'm not trying to dispute the political stuff. I don't do politics at all, is that Russia isn't in it. And if you think about it, and someone posted this the other day, like if Russia was in this, or for next year with the Olympics, rather, who will be on Russia? Well, I'm going to give you some names. You'd have Kirill Kaprizov, obviously, Malkin, Kucherov, Panarin, Buchnevich, Svechnikov, Ovechkin. That team is going to be very good. And then when you look in goal, which I think is they're going to have this might be the greatest collection of 3 rostered goalies I've ever seen on a roster. You'd have Igor Shesterkin, who we all know, Vasilevsky from Tampa, and Sorokin from the Islanders. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you get excited if the U.S. wins tomorrow? Yeah, I guess. Do you get excited if you're Canadian and Canada wins tomorrow? I guess. But you didn't really go up against a massively strong opponent. I don't want to say it was a foregone conclusion before the tournament started, but if you had looked at DraftKings last week before the tournament even started, the odds would have told you that there would be very, very high odds that the final tomorrow night in Boston on that Thursday, the 20th, was going to be in U.S. and Canada, and that is exactly what we got. So there's no real surprise there at all. But it's just, for me, like, yeah, you want to win the Four Nations tournament, but you also don't have Russia in, and Russia would be legit. I mean, Russia could – that goaltending – it's not a tandem, because I guess a tandem would be 2, right? Does the word tandem mean 2?
Yeah, I think so.
So it would be trio.
The tripod.
Right. The trio of goaltenders Russia will have in Igor, Vasilevsky, and Sorokin is absurd. Like, I don't even – yeah. I mean, and you think about Canada, which we'll get into in a minute with their goaltending issues. If they had any of those 3, it would greatly improve their odds. So
they will be in the Olympics, though, right?
Yes, they should be in the Olympics next year. They should be allowed. Yeah.
Okay.
But even if they're not, it would be, you're going to be playing against more competition. Now, those other countries that will join will not really be competitive. But if you have U.S. and Canada and Russia,
wear and tear in your body and stuff, it's a factor.
Yeah. And also, Chris brings a good point that in goaltending, we're leaving off Bobrovsky, who's also Russian, would be the 4th goaltender there. Wow. So if you could only carry 3 roster spots, one of those 4 is getting cut, which is absurd. The other danger, and this just came out this morning, part of it we'll get to, is, look, whenever you stop in any sport the regular season and then have players go into more competitive games, you run the risk of injuries. And unfortunately, there hasn't been anything short of that so far in this tournament. You have both Kachuk brothers who are banged up, right? One of Matthew didn't play, or Brady didn't play Monday night against Sweden. Although I would think if that game mattered, he probably would have. But you don't like the fact that they're banged up. You have Theodore, the defenseman for Canada, who plays in the regular season for the Vegas Golden Knights, who's out of the tournament. Now, they're not going to say much about it, but it doesn't sound like it's good. Like, if you can decide instantly that he's out for 2 weeks and you don't have to say anything else, chances of him playing next week for Vegas is probably slim. The worst of them, and we just had an update this morning, and I thank the people on the MYPB group chat because that's where I read it, was Charlie McAvoy has been out, and the team doctor released a statement saying that there's a significant injury to his joint in his shoulder, and he's been hospitalized, so he isn't coming back. So you think about the risk you have we'll talk about it from the Ranger context, right? If Zibanejad got hurt, if Kreider got hurt, or Fox, or any of these guys that are Trocheck, and Trocheck for the other night and in that game on Monday night looked like he was hurt for a couple of minutes but came back, you would be thinking very differently of this tournament if your team's odds of winning the Stanley Cup, which is now only 3.5 months away, the Stanley Cup Finals, takes a blow because of this tournament. You would hate it,
especially when 3 fights are breaking out before the puck even drops.
That is true. So we will get to that in a minute. Well, we're going to get to that now. So let's talk about the U.S.-Canada game on Saturday night. So U.S. wins 3-1 with an empty netter. Look, that game could go either way. And in the third period, the U.S. couldn't really get anything going. So Canada's top line power play is kind of like a video game. Like when you were a kid, right? Right, you still are a kid. You're a big kid. We're all big kids, right? We never try to like lose the kid aspect of our life. But when you were a kid and you were playing NHL video games, or maybe you played Madden and it was football, and you could like weasel your way into convincing the computer that this trade was fair, and you had you had Mark Messier on the same team with Wayne Gretzky, and your goaltender was Martin Brodeur. You happy with that, art doggy? I threw him a little thing there in the corner. So you had you have a stacked team, an unfair team, and your rating on your team when you get on that team screen is 99 out of 100, and you'll never lose. That is like the Canada's top line power play with McDavid and McKinnon. I mean, it really is. The top line power play, if you watch the first period the other night, now Canada didn't score on the power play, but the puck movement is just unbelievable. Like, it really is. It's cool to watch, whether you score or not, even just watching the puck movement. Connor McDavid shows you on Saturday night why he is the best player in the game. The goal that he scored, when he gets open ice and he hits his stride, he burns past, I believe it was McAvoy for the goal. No one could catch him. And remember, you're playing against now the top players in the world, and he's doing that. It's not like you're playing against Ryan Lindgren or Keandre Miller, which you would expect it to happen. But when you see him playing against that sort of competition and doing it that still is incredible. So a very good game. Now, I don't want to get into the political stuff, but you guys asked me to bring it up, so I'm going to bring it up. The booing of the national anthem that happened in Canada, I'm sorry, I can't lose sleep over this. Like, I have a million things, we all do, right? Life is full of things that you go through. I'm not losing sleep over the Canadian fans booing the U.S. national anthem. Do I like it? No. Would I go and boo? Like, if I was there tomorrow night in Boston, which I will not be. So if I was there tomorrow night and I'm in the TD Bank Garden and they play the Canadian national anthem and I'm rocking, my TJ Oshie U.S. jersey that I'm wearing today, am I going to sit there and boo "Oh Canada"? No, I'm not.
I think you should.
No, I'm not. I don't know.
I think there should be some booing going on.
They
booed us.
But you
Boo
don't.
back,
but two wrong. It's not that two wrongs make a right, because I don't know what's right or wrong. But I'm just saying that because you guys wanted me to bring it up because you guys asked it in the questions yesterday for the show to bring up. I don't. Do I like that they did it? No, I'd rather them not. But I'm not. My takeaway Saturday night is that the U.S. beat Canada. It's not that the national anthem got booed.
I get it. No, and it wasn't a big deal because there is no big deal to even be booed in the first place. Like, the boos were, I don't think the boos were warranted in the first place. It wasn't like, there's not like some big political thing going on, unless I missed something. Did I miss something, B-Rock?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's tariffs and stuff going on, whatever, but it's not like we're at war.
But I don't also again, we're going down a bad area here. And
what's going on that needs booing?
I'll say one thing and then we're gonna move on because I'm not getting into politics. If I think of countries that I don't like, and there's not really any that I don't really like, I've never had a problem with Canada.
There's countries we're like, quote unquote, in war with that we don't boo their national anthem in the Olympics. That's what I'm saying. Like, this isn't like, there's not a big controversy going on between us and Canada. Besides that, we're going to make them our 54th state or whatever.
Scud has a good point on Instagram, which is the 51st state, which I think is part of it. So I think it was a combination. If you're Canadian, and I think what kind of triggered the boos was the Trump tariffs, which, again, we don't do anything with politics on this show because they might as well be in Chinese for me, and the 51st state. But again, I'm not losing sleep over it. Do I like it? No, but I wouldn't sit there and do it tomorrow night. So tomorrow night, U.S. plays Canada. The U.S. plays Canada in the finals. Now, where does the U.S. have it? I'm going to make a pick in a minute. I'm going to give you my pick for the game. But where the U.S. has the advantage is in the number one position on the ice, and that is goaltending. Connor Hellebuck is much better than Jordan Binnington, easily.
Yeah.
So that's where the advantage lies if you're rooting for the U.S.
Can I give you a fun fact?
Yes.
When the U.S. beat Canada, they broke a 26-game win streak.
That is true for the Canadian national team.
Yes.
Look at you. Sometimes, there's times here I feel like I must ask you for photo ID to prove who you are because you've become a new man through this show. You really have.
Grown.
You used to know nothing about hockey. Now you know marginal, but you're getting there. You don't know, more. You're getting there. Slowly but surely. So the U.S. advantage is in obviously goaltending. You don't know the extent of the Matthew and Brady Tkachuk injuries, although I'm pretty sure they're going to play. But they're obviously not 100%. And Charlie McAvoy injury does not help either, even though McAvoy probably wasn't your top pair defenseman. I would have to look at that. I don't know that definitively, but I would think he's not the top pair. I would say that U.S. is going to need a bad goal or two to get past Binnington, like how Jake Gensel got the U.S. on the board the other night. Like somehow you're going to have to take advantage of Jordan Binnington to win this game. I think it's hard to beat a team like Canada twice, let alone twice in 5 days. As you just said, because you are the stat maven here, Canada had won 26 straight games. Now you're asking them to lose twice in 5 days. I think it's a lot. And I do think lineup-wise that if I take the goaltending out, I think Canada is better. Doesn't mean I don't think U.S. is good, but Canada is better. If the U.S. is going to win the game, and my prediction is going to be that Canada wins,
Wow.
but if U.S. is going to win the game, somehow you've exploited Jordan Binnington. Yes, what were you going to say?
Chris, I don't know if this is relevant. Chris says, what game started this win streak? Does anyone know?
What game started that win streak?
He's asking as if he knows some big secret.
Well, he obviously knows the answer. I'm going to guess that it's the Crosby goal in 2010 in overtime where they beat the U.S. But that's a total guess. I don't know. Now, whoever you root for, whether it's U.S. or Canada, or you're like me and you're kind of like quasi into it, but you're not, but you're into it because you'll watch it because it's on TV, and you won't get the Knicks Bulls game tomorrow night because it's on MSG and you're blacked out. You know, whoever you root for, if your team loses tomorrow night, it's not something I lose sleep over. This is not the Olympics next year. If you're in international hockey play, which is fine, I don't have a problem if you are. Your main thing is basically the World Cup. And I guess I was right on that, Chris is saying. I was right on my guess. Yeah, that's the game that started the streak, I guess. Is the Olympics next year. I mean, that's the one you want to win. So if you lose tomorrow night, again, you'll be okay.
We're at war now. They booed us. We're at war now.
This is not the Crosby goal that we just talked about in 2010 in overtime against Ryan Miller, if you remember. I was actually, I'll tell you a weird story about that game.
Please.
So on that Sunday, the U.S. played Canada. This was the beginning of March of 2010. The U.S. played Canada on a Sunday in the gold medal final. And I was traveling for work. I was in San Jose. Matter of fact, B-Rock, 2 days after that, I went to see the Devils play in San Jose because I took my client for work and I wanted to go see the Shark Tank, and they happened to be playing the Devils. Devils West. And the Devils, actually, you could look it up. In 2010, this is true, the Devils had a 4-0 lead, and the Sharks almost came back. And I believe the Devils won 4-3. I was actually cheering with the home team because I can't stand the Devils. Anyway, I was in San Jose, California, watching that in like this crappy hotel I was in the lobby with a bunch of U.S. fans, and people were livid when they lost. But that's the Olympics, right? This is not the Olympics. This is the Four Nations face-off that has 4 teams that 50% of the teams make the finals.
Yeah, but we're at war with Canada now.
We're not at war with Canada. Stop. So we will see tomorrow night what happens. That game, 8 o'clock tomorrow night from TD Garden in Boston, as you will have U.S. and Canada facing off. The New York Rangers. Now, the 2-week break for the Rangers, who knows if this is a good thing or bad thing? I mean, I guess time will tell, and you'll learn pretty quickly this weekend. The Rangers return to action on Saturday in Buffalo, and then Sunday they are back-to-back on the road in Pittsburgh. And then Tuesday, they come home versus the Islanders. So there's 3 games in 4 days. Also, down the road a week and a half, a little bit later in that week, they have 4 home games in 6 days. So what happens is when you block off the schedule, okay, when you block off the schedule for 2 weeks, you have to make up all of these games somewhere. And now you're going to get a plethora of games, which is good.
Game overdrive.
Which is good. And we're going to see here what they have.
So at the same period last year, the same point, let's just say we're 3 months away from the finals, the playoffs. So in the same period of 3 months last year, we have to fit in the same amount of games, but we lost 2 weeks.
You lost 2 weeks, so you have to get more in. Now, next year is going to be a scheduling nightmare because the NHL is off a month. They're going to be off basically the entire month of February.
So we have a game every other day.
No, what I think they'll do, they will probably start a week earlier. Like they'll start instead of like October 9th. I bet you they start like October 2nd or 3rd. And they'll probably push back the end of the season a week or 2. So you're still going to have more games that you're going to have to make up. But you're going to definitely have more games condensed. So you'll have more back to back. And Chris brings up a very good point, and I thought of this too. It's pretty stupid that the championship game is on Thursday night in Boston. So if you're a player in US or Canada, which is all really NHLers, right? Friday, if you want to get autographs, by the way, from hockey players, you know what you do?
What do you do?
You go Friday morning to Logan Airport in Boston because they're all going to have to fly to wherever they are. So you play this intense emotional game tomorrow night, and then players on Friday all have to travel to wherever their NHL team is playing on Saturday. Or even if they're playing home, wherever their home is, they got to travel back there.
I mean, let alone Chris is talking about double headers. Just the fact that you have like your regular game, one game the next day, 2 days is crazy.
Right. Well, the Rangers have 3 and 4. Yeah. And they'll have, Trocheck, Fox play tomorrow night. I mean, they'll have guys that will be in the lineup. Zibanejad obviously won't. Kreider, I don't think, will be in the lineup. But so Igor Shesterkin, it came out yesterday. You don't get a lot of Ranger news or any NHL news for the matter during this tournament, but it came out yesterday that Igor did skate again. Igor is out 1 to 2 weeks when you all bombarded my phone and when I was at my son's soccer practice to tell me that he was out 1 to 2 weeks when the Rangers coincidentally were off for 2 weeks. So I'm not sure why that mattered. But I would think Igor is only playing one game this weekend. I would think he's ready to play one. And I would assume that if I was Peter Laviolette and I said, am I playing him Saturday in Buffalo or Sunday in Pittsburgh? I'm probably playing him Sunday in Pittsburgh, would be my guess. So he also might give him an extra day rest. So I would think you would see him this weekend. If Igor is out for an extended period of time, which there's no real indication to think that is the case, but if that is somehow the case, that would be a major problem. Because you're not going to rely on Jonathan Quick every night down the stretch, especially with the amount of games you have, because Jonathan Quick's going to have to play in a bunch of these games because there's just so many games. So tomorrow, Saturday in Buffalo, Sunday in Pittsburgh, Tuesday home against the Islanders. The trade deadline creeps up in the NHL every single year. When it's like you'll be moving along and then all of a sudden chaos happens. The trade deadline starts in 2 weeks. And Alvin brings up a good point, and we'll bring up his comment because he segued right into it. And that is, we didn't get Ranger news, which is why Larry Brooks generated Ranger clickbait with Lafreniere. So the other day, it comes out that Larry Brooks, who has been the Rangers post writer for as long as I have been a fan, everyone knows Larry Brooks. Matter of fact, there'll be teams that you might root for in your life in any sport. And you may not know who the beat writers are for the local media, which is fine. Every Ranger fan knows who Larry Brooks is. And for whatever reason, I'm not getting involved and I'm not going to give my opinion. Most people do not like Larry Brooks, but he is one of the beat reporters for the New York Post. Larry Brooks the other day put out and said, hey, if I'm Chris Drury, I am looking at calling Pat Verbeek, who is the general manager in Anaheim, and I'm going to see if I could find a way maybe to trade Alexis Lafreniere to Anaheim for Trevor Zegras. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. This might be it actually is so stupid that it makes me think that I should have, back in my college days, pursued a career trying to get into sports media covering the Rangers, because I wouldn't write something like this. When you see the people that are getting paid, that this stuff is getting published. Now, we live in a day and age now, and we all know this, and it is annoying, where clickbait occurs, right? People will write things. They may know it's stupid. They may know it's dumb, but yet they do it because they will get clicks and it helps views and all this stuff. That would be quite possibly the dumbest thing I have ever seen a team do if you traded Alexis Lafreniere to Trevor Zegras. Now, you might think to yourself, well, there's got to be some reason. Maybe you don't agree with the reasons. There has to be some reasons why you would do such a thing. And those reasons, which I don't agree with, is taking the stance that Alexis Lafreniere has had, and this is true, a down year. But the entire team has had a down year. There's no one on this team other than the name Will Cooley who's had a good year at this rate. So why would you ever do such a thing like that? That is that, and for it could be clickbait. Now, again, I don't know how this stuff works,
Mhm.
But maybe they didn't get a lot of clicks in the last 2 weeks because the Rangers were off. I don't know. But I do know Molly Walker is up in Boston who works for the Post covering the Four Nations
Mhm.
for the Post. So I don't know. But that will not be a trade that Chris Drury explores. But speaking of the trade deadline, will Chris Drury, here's the thing. Does he use the next 2 weeks of games? Because the trading deadline is March 7th, I believe.
Mhm.
It's either March 7th or March 8th. I think it's March 7th. So that's 2.5 weeks away. That's 16 days away from when we tape this episode. Does Chris Drury use these next 16 days to kind of make up his mind on what his stance will be in the trade deadline? Or does he already know what it is? Does he know what his plan is going to be? I don't think there's anything I can see in the next 16 days that would lead me to believe that I would be a buyer. I just can't do that. I can't see that. Now, what I could see happening
Mhm.
is I could see the Rangers doing really well. Well, now let me say this. Take that back. I said that completely wrong because I don't see them doing well. Let's say the Rangers come out of the gate here and they do really well, right?
Mhm.
Let's say they run off a string of games and they're now in the wild card spot. I still wouldn't believe for a minute that this team, as we have seen them for the past 4.5 months, can somehow find a way to string off 16 wins in the spring against top caliber teams to win the Stanley Cup. It's just not this year. And if you're going to buy, and this will be part of the message we're going to talk about here in the next few weeks, and next week we have Casey Hudson on with us, so we can ask her if she agrees with this. I don't mind buying if it's buying for the future. What I'm not doing right now is I'm not going out there and I'm not getting a Vladimir Tarasenko or a Patrick Kane or a player who's coming here, Vetrano, who has no term beyond this year, otherwise known as a rental. There's
Mhm.
no reason to do that this year. But if I could find someone that has term on their contract, meaning that they have maybe 2 or 3 years left. So when I'm trading for them, it's not just for this year, and I can see where they will fit. I could see that. I was on a Ranger podcast as a guest on Monday. I was on up in the blue seats.
Mhm.
Good show. I wear the shirt every time, and we were talking about positional needs. He asked me, if you're Chris Drury, is there a position you need more than others, offense or defense? And it was a good question because I hadn't thought about it. But my answer was, and we'll put it in the chats if you guys agree. My answer was that I would be looking to fill more the defensive role because defensively they have been an absolute train wreck.
Mhm.
And it's been things this season like blown coverages. As I said on this guy's podcast on Monday,
Mhm.
what aggravates me the most, and my wife who sits there and somehow watches these games with me with my anxiety level, is that I I had posted that, and I posted this the other day as well. What will drive me nuts in the defensive end with my teams is that they cannot get the puck out. That is not the problem this year. It's just the blown coverages. So defensively, and I see you guys are agreeing with me on the chat. Defensively is the way that I would go right now. If I was targeting like positional needs, is what they need.
Yeah. Zibanejad Jam needs to hit the cage.
Yeah, that's not happening. Now, the other thing, remember, you have Ryan Lindgren is an unrestricted free agent.
Mhm.
That is he's probably not coming back. There's no signs that makes you think that he's coming back to this team next year. Keandre Miller might also not be back next year. So when you factor in all of these players,
Mhm.
that's two defensemen right there in your top 6 that you need to fill next year. Unfortunately, and I'm not saying this to be a jerk because some of you are going to go nuts on me when I say this, but I'm just merely stating a fact. The team does not feel like Zach Jones is an NHL defenseman, or he would have been in the lineup by now. So I don't think they're looking at Zach Jones and saying, you know what, well, he wasn't good enough in 2024, 2025, but I'm pretty sure that he'll be good enough in 2025, 2026 to take one of those 2 open spots. They're
Mhm.
not. They need to trade for defense.
Is there anyone on your radar?
So that it's a good question because he asked me this the other day on the podcast that I was on. No, I don't. I'd have to look. I think you have to filter it down the names. Like I could give you a name, and I don't have one in mind, but I have to know that person's contract situation,
Mhm.
right? If the player, if I said to you, Go out and get B-Rock for defense, okay?
I think you should get our dogs.
Our dogs. If I got our dogs for defense, right, over there in the corner, but he was on a rental contract and he had nothing beyond this year, then I don't need him. It's all about term. It's all about buying for the future.
Yeah.
This is not a team that's going to make a deep Stanley Cup run. I could be wrong, and you can clip it. It's at the 30-minute mark on this episode, episode 187, when they go on a run.
Wasn't there someone you were talking about recently who on our team whose contract's almost up? You should look to shop them or rent them or something like that.
Yeah, Lindgren and Miller. Now, Nikolai brings up a painful point, and we can pull that up on the comments on the YouTube, is we should trade Zach Jones and Vitaly Kravtsov for Jack Eichel. Oh, wait. Now, if you're forgetting about or you're not sure what that is in reference to, when Jack Eichel forced his way out of Buffalo, it was rumored, now we don't know this definitively, that the asking price from Buffalo management to the Rangers to get Jack Eichel was Vitaly Kravtsov and Zach Jones. And I think, Nikolai, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Philip Hedl was in that discussion too for some reason. Kravtsov now is living in Russia somewhere. Zach Jones isn't even on the roster, and Philip Hedl's playing out in San Jose. I mean, Vancouver. And if you think about this team, even to make this more painful, right? If you think about it and you look at Mika Zibanejad, well, he isn't the top line center anymore, I guess, technically, since JT Miller got here. But you think of what the lineup would be like in having a top line center like Jack Eichel, and you would have given up people that were not even going to make your team. That is painful. And that's Nikolai depressing you for a while. But yes. So we shall see what they do. But I think you have to look defense and you have to look term. And I don't think you're going to see anything like out of the blue big trade. Because, that always is talked about. It is New York. That's always fair to say. Maybe like it's the expectation. They always do something, whether it's Vetrano, whether it's Andrew Kopp, whether it's Tarasenko or Kane, the big name. I just don't think this is the year that you would do that.
True.
So we shall see. Looking at the wild card standings as we get back into NHL play this weekend, as it stands right now, the Rangers are trailing the final wild card spot, which is occupied by the Detroit Red Wings, by 3 points. And they do have a game. No, they do not have a game in hand. So the Rangers have 27 games left and trail the last wild card spot by 3. So
I think it's doable.
I would say it's doable. Now, where it gets interesting is in the amount of teams. So Detroit is at 61 points in that final spot. The Rangers are at 58. You have 2 teams with 60 in Columbus and Boston. Boston, though, gets a massive punch to the gut with the McAvoy injury, though, right? Like that. Boston already had issues. Now it might even be worse. So I'm going to say that Boston doesn't make the playoffs. So now, between you and Detroit are Columbus. Do you trust Columbus to make a long run, to be able to stay in this for 82 games? I don't know. Probably not. Then you have the Islanders behind you. The Islanders had that 7-game win streak a couple weeks ago, but it hasn't been indicative of their season. Was it more of a flash in the pan? Look, the Rangers can make the playoffs. I still don't think that they will, but they can. If you make the wild card, you are on a course. If you get the second wild card, the Caps have almost, the Caps have almost all but wrapped up the number 1 seed because they have 8. They are 9 points ahead of Florida, who is the leader in the other division, and they have 2 games at hand. So if you got the second seed, let's think for a minute. If you got the second seed and you played the Caps in round 1, what would you think? What would be your predictions? Put in the chat. It's Rangers Caps round 1. But be objective. I'm not saying you can't pick the Rangers. I don't want you to be a homer in your picks. What would be your pick for round 1? I would say, it's hard to not pick the Capitals.
They only played twice this year so far. Rangers and Capitals. Rangers 7-4 Capitals, 5-3 Capitals.
The Rangers are 0-2 versus the Caps, and the Caps come into the Garden in 2 weeks from tonight, actually the 5th. So Chris brings up a good point. You don't have the final rosters, which is true, but for sake of playing a game, let's say you were going off of your final rosters that you had here. Like, who would you take? Rangers, Caps, 7. Let's hear your predictions in the chat. I would say I have to think it through, but off the top, I would say Caps in 6.
Rangers in 4.
Not a homer. Nope. Not a homer.
Rangers in 4.
It worked last year when they played the Caps. It was Rangers in 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try. You know what? And I don't trust the Caps like long term, but I just think that if the Rangers didn't show up, and Marquee American is saying that depends on what Rangers show up. If the Rangers show up that have shown up for most of the season, this series is over in 5 games at most. If the Rangers win, it will be in 6. Okay. Which would make sense because they would be home for game 6, right? You'd have the opportunity to clinch at home. If you had to win it in 7, you'd have to win it on the road. And this team has not been the greatest road team this year with a record of 13-12 on the road. And normally the Rangers have a better record on the road than they do at home. They're 14-12 at home. They're 13-12 on the road. Yeah. I don't know what it would be like. So the Rangers have been in the playoffs every year since 2018. Like, I don't know what it would be. No, I'm sorry. That's not true. They didn't make it in 2021, the year of the Panarin and Tom Wilson episode at the end of the season in the COVID year. I don't know. Now, you have a good point that American, that they didn't have JT Miller this season. Look, if JT Miller can be the reason that they improve in the next 27 regular season games and lead you to success in the playoffs, more credit to JT Miller. And then he's a rock star. But I don't know that I'm buying it. Put in the chat for those of you watching, if you don't mind. I'm curious your predictions on US Canada. Give me your prediction on who wins in the score. And there's a reason why I'm asking the score. And I'm going to tell you once you give me some predictions. I want to know who wins, but I want to know the score also. And there's a reason why. Tomorrow night, US Canada, 8 p.m., Four Nations final up in Canada. By the way, they showed, and they show it a lot, but they'll show the US bench, right? And they show it's Mike Sullivan, John Tortorella, David Quinn. It is like a cavalcade of ex-Ranger coaches. It's amazing. It really is. Mike Sullivan was an assistant coach. If you're wondering, well, he didn't coach the Rangers. He did. He was the assistant coach when Tortorella first took over. Jeff Adelson from Florida is saying USA wins 4-2.
Ooh.
Jeff Adelson is pretty good at predictions. Yeah. Chris says Canada wins 3-1. Nikolai says 2-1 Canada. We'll take some of the Instagram ones. Coffee Sports Collectibles USA 4-2. 57 Joe USA 4-3. Gibby USA 3-2. And then we got some comments. David Quinn ruined Kako, which is true also. So here's why I'm asking what the scores is. If US is going to win, and you guys are in line with me. So US, we have 4-2, 4-3, 3-2, and 4-2. They all have them scoring goals because you've taken advantage of Jordan Binnington's in net, right? I think that if the US is going to win, they're going to have to score a lot of goals. And Connor Hellebuck is good, and I think he's actually – I've changed my stance on him. I used to think Igor was better. Like, I mean, that's me being biased, of course. But if I think about it, I think right now Hellebuck is better than Igor. Wow. Not much, but he's better than Igor. He's going to have to stand on his head. And if the U.S. takes penalties tomorrow night and puts that top power play unit out on the ice a lot, my goodness, it can get ugly. Like, you almost can't take penalties early. Because if you give Canada a lead, like an early lead, and granted they were able to overcome it, I guess, on Saturday night. But sorry, the Americans must win enough with Canada in every international tournament. We shall see, Paul.
Yeah, we're at war.
Now,
everyone better boo that national anthem.
Now, you were only at war with them because of the national anthem. Gavin is saying 4-3 U.S. in overtime. Chris F., unfortunately, U.S. loses because we won that game on Doesn't Really Matter. We were on cloud 9. Now, Chris brings up a good point there on Instagram. Different Chris than the YouTube. That as excited as everyone was on Sunday morning, posting a million things about U.S. being better than Canada If you lose tomorrow to Canada in the finals, it was all for nothing.
True.
Because one of those wins was much more significant than the other.
A little bit.
Just a tad. Just a tad. So that is tomorrow night, 8 o'clock from Boston. The Rangers return 2 afternoon games. Saturday, it's like a random time. I think it's 5:30 on Saturday up in Buffalo. Sunday, they are in Pittsburgh, return home to play at actually, they're not home. They're in Long Island on Tuesday night. And then they will return home. What, a comment? Let me see.
Nikolai.
What is it?
Great take.
What a take if you would have scored the most goals. Nikolai? That's why they paid me the big bucks. Thank you. My point, though, let me drill it down a little bit more, is that if the U.S. is going to win, they're going to have to score a lot of goals. They're not going to win 2-1.
Not just more goals.
No, not just more. If I said more goals, that's on me. U.S. will win. They want it more from Travel Master.
Yeah.
Paul, Chris, Team USA needs the win regardless of who's in Canada's lineup.
Yeah.
I would say this. Now, Paul may bring up a good point. I don't know if he was going there.
Yeah.
It would be more significant if the U.S. won than Canada. Canada wins these things all the time.
Yeah.
So it would be more meaningful for sure if the U.S. wins. But, before you get into what you're going to say, if you're a U.S. fan, all right, would you rather win tomorrow night versus Canada in the finals or win the Olympics next year? You'd rather win the Olympics next year.
True. Now, look, it's a very interesting time in history. We're at war with Canada, and we're going to boo during the national anthem, and we're going to win, and we might make a movie out of this. It might be Miracle 2.
It might be. So that is it for us today. Next week, I believe we have Casey Hudson on with us again, Ranger reporter, so we can dive into the 3 games that the Rangers will have been back on the ice for since then. We will then be a week away from the trade deadline. So we will get rid of the Four Nations face-off and back into Ranger stuff real quickly here. Like in the next week, it will be this. Four Nations will be a distant memory. You'll be screaming at me about Zibanejad rather than you will about Canada and booing your national anthem. We thank DraftKings for their sponsorship as always. We thank the Bamboozle Project. Go to thebamboozleproject.com. Use promo code MYPB at checkout. And Rangers back this weekend. U.S. tomorrow night. Let's get Emma's comment. Let's get Larry Brooks in here. That would be fun. It would be fun. Larry Brooks doesn't seem to do a lot. Doesn't have any interest in doing like outside stuff other than his own stuff, but it would be interesting. So thank you, Paul, for the comments. Thank you guys for following along with us as always, that are watching us live in the chat. You guys make the show what it is, and we will talk to you next week.